Today I am making the video that I would love to watch, which is a seasonal video for the Southern Hemisphere. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the themes that are emerging from this season's retail clothing, and then I'm going to give you my top 8 underrated patterns which are suitable for autumn or winter in the Southern Hemisphere. Welcome to my knitting channel. My name is Nadine and you can find me at yourknittingbestie on Instagram, Ravelry and here on YouTube. On this channel you can expect to find me talking about my knitting and in particular what it's like to be a knitter in what is usually a warmer climate. But as the name of the video suggests, it is actually getting cooler here in Brisbane as we are in the midst of autumn, soon to be transitioning into winter. So I thought it was about time for a seasonal video talking about the themes of the season and some of the patterns that I would love to knit for autumn that also work to transition into winter, in my opinion. Of course, I'm going to be talking from the perspective of a Brisbane knitter, so I'll give you a little bit of an overview of what these seasons are like here, because I'm sure that it's a little bit different around Australia and around different parts of the Southern Hemisphere. So here in autumn, it's a little bit of a non-event because the landscape doesn't really change too much through autumn. There is no falling of the leaves. The leaves don't really change colour at all. As you can see in my little window here, things kind of stay green and pretty much exactly the same year round, to be honest. So the only real difference is a bit of a change in temperature. So in autumn, the days can be a little bit difficult to dress for because they can start off very cold, or at least cold in the opinion of someone who lives in Brisbane. So start off very cold, but then get quite warm through the middle of the day. So to give you a bit of an example, I've got the average temperatures in autumn and winter. So an autumn day can be anywhere from between 15 degrees up to a high of 29 degrees. So in this season, I think it is essential to have layers that can come off during the middle of the day without wrecking your outfit. I think that's an essential characteristic of this season's kind of outfits. And then in winter, we get down to a little bit cooler, so average of around 12 degrees at the lower point, although I swear it gets a little bit cooler than that. We've been sub 10 before. And then goes up to around 22 degrees. So the kind of window of temperatures gets a little smaller during the day, so it's a little bit easier to dress for. But I think it still helps to have layers that you can take off or put on as the temperature requires, because of course you'll be moving in and out of air-conditioned controlled environments as well. So I have to tell you how I came up with the idea for this video because it was kind of funny. So it was on a weekend, pretty early in the morning, and I was just doing some running around, getting the car washed, all of that sort of thing. And I ended up popping to the shops to do our grocery shopping, but got there about half an hour before the shops opened. So I was just wandering around a shopping mall with my coffee, kind of looking at the different fashion displays in the windows and taking pictures of the outfits that I liked. And it was at that point that I was like, oh gosh, it would be so fun to do a seasonal video talking about what the different stores are doing in this season. And then I caught a look of my reflection in the window and it was hysterical because I was wearing bright blue leopard print bike shorts, a bright pink sweater, no makeup, hair in a top knot, and Birkenstocks. And I was like, yes, Nadine, you look like the authority on fashion. This is definitely something that you should do. But anyway, I thought it would be a bit of fun. So I made a bit of a mood board of the different themes that I saw from some of my favourite stores to get inspo from for my knitwear. So the ones in particular that stood out to me this season were Seed and Country Road, because I like the kind of look that they tend to have. They tend to be a bit sophisticated and elevated, casual, but also outfits that you could wear into the office. So they're the ones that I quite like. So let me get up. I'll pop up on the screen my little mood board, which I had some fun doing. So the thing that I really liked this season is that it seems that many outfits that are being put together are monochrome. So almost the exact shade on the top and the bottom half of the outfits, which I think actually creates this very polished look. And you just, I don't know, you just look very put together when you match so well. Usually I like a little bit of contrast in my outfits. So for example, underneath this top here, I'm wearing a light pink singlet. So colors that kind of look well together but aren't exactly the same. But I found that when I saw the outfits that these different shops had put together, I think it really worked because the top and the bottom half tended to be different textures. So that's where you get the contrast, and it kind of draws the eye more to that difference in texture as opposed to a difference in color. So, for example, you might have kind of a chunky cardigan on the top with a silk or satin kind of bottom half, and those midi skirts tend to be very popular. Or I also saw some outfits where the top was kind of a knitted garment and then the bottom half was a faux leather skirt or pair of trousers, which I also thought was pretty interesting and looked very nice. And then in the terms of the colours that I saw when I was walking around, it seemed to be the more kind of luxurious, deeper, richer colours. And maybe those are the colours that we kind of naturally gravitate more towards when we're cold, because it kind of gives that lush, warmer feeling. The colours that I tended to see coming up again and again were a navy blue, which I love as kind of the darker accent colour of the season, because it's a little bit warmer than just a straight black. And I do love wearing darker colours as well, particularly into the office. A bit of a silver or light grey moment seemed to be happening a lot. On the neutral front, there was also kind of a cool tone beige, I would describe it as, moving into a yellow or kind of gold colour. Cream, so another neutral, and that kind of lilac colour, so not a deeper purple. It seemed that the lighter purples were really in this season. So personally, I really like the way those colours look together as a bit of a palette. So I might be looking for those colours when I purchase yarn for new projects or when I look to put together outfits from my own wardrobe. Okay, so that gives you a bit of an idea of my climate, the themes that I'm looking for, and just generally the type of things that I was thinking of when I put together these 8 patterns. So as I mentioned, these are all patterns that have less than 100 projects on Ravelry. So I think some of them are actually just patterns which deserve more attention than they're getting, but some of them are also new patterns that I fully expect will exceed 100 projects given some time. But in any event, I hope that you find some that you haven't heard of or that you hadn't considered for a project for this season. And my favourite one is actually the one at the end, which is a unisex pattern that you could also knit for someone who dresses more masculine. So starting us off is something that I think is definitely a trend in the knitterverse, which is a wrap cardigan. They seem to be everywhere at the moment, don't you think? And I believe there was a great video that I saw comparing the different types of wrap cardigans, which I'll pop on screen and link below. But the one that I really like the look of, and it also has an excellent name, the Big Burrito Cardigan by Wool and Beyond. So this pattern is around about $11.90 AUD, and this only has 6 projects on Ravelry, which blows my mind because it looks incredible. So let me tell you a little bit about this particular project. It is, to start off with, a full garter stitch cardigan, which I think really solves my main issue with cardigans, which is that there's a heap of purling involved because you're knitting flat usually. So this pattern completely cuts out the purling because it's all garter stitch. I love this. I cannot overstate how fantastic I think this is. The tie itself, isn't at the bottom part of the cardigan. It sits a little bit higher at what looks to be around the natural waist point of the garment, which I think is quite flattering and doesn't add bulk then at the kind of hips. There's also an I-cord tie on the inner side of the wrap cardigan, so you can tie that together so it doesn't kind of separate at that side. And this is also a DK and fingering weight yarn selection, so overall worsted weight, which I think is great for this time of the year. Worsted is probably getting towards the heavier side of what I would personally choose to knit with, but I think this is the time to go for it. But yeah, so overall, absolutely loving the look of this cardigan, and it is a real standout for something that I would like to knit as well. My only reservation is that since it's a wrap cardigan, it might not look as nice worn open, which tends to be how I wear a lot of my cardigans to get a bit of airflow when needed. But again, I think if it's for this time of year, then it's a chance that you could take, particularly if you're wearing just a little t-shirt or something underneath. So if you're happy for that to be your outfit if you take off the cardigan, I think it's totally fine. I believe the designer behind Wool and Beyond has also just started a YouTube channel, so I'll link her channel down below in case you're interested. And I think she is perfect. She really stands out in my mind for a designer that has kind of different ideas. She doesn't just knit projects that are the same as kind of everyone else. She has really quite novel constructions and novel projects. So I think she's really going to be one to watch. So the next project is also a cardigan, and it is called the Purl cardigan. This one is €9.50 or about $16.30 AUD, and this one has 49 projects on Ravelry. So as you can see from the picture, what really stands out to me is that this kind of has the look and shape of a classic cardigan, but it has different construction details, which gives it that beautiful kind of arc at the back. So from the description, it looks like this is a construction where you knit the left and the right shoulders separately, then join them and pick up stitches for the back before using German short rows to shape the shoulders. So as you might know, the different shoulder construction is something that I'm really interested in this year. So I'm really drawn to the idea of trying this pattern for that detail in particular. I also love the fact that it has the wide ribbing at the bottom and then a different rib stitch on the top, so it gives it a little bit of difference in texture. I really like it in this red colour, to be honest, and it is, let me get the yarn information for you. Yes, so it is knit in a sport weight yarn held with a lace weight yarn for an overall DK weight project. So it's at 22 stitch gauge. So I think that is a perfect kind of weight for this season. Not too hot, not too cool, and something that you can definitely layer if you need to or take off as you need to. Basically, this pattern just seems to be classic with a bit of a twist. So a very classic silhouette, and it actually looks a lot like the pictures that I showed before, the inspiration pictures from the different shops. But it just has, as I said, some interesting knitting details. So definitely one that I would love to make as well. And even though it's got less than the 50 projects on Ravelry, this project has 4.9 stars for the overall pattern rating as well as the clarity rating. So I think that's a very good sign that it's a good quality pattern. Okay, so the next pattern I've got for you is a lightweight pullover, a fingering weight pullover. And this one is called the Brooklyn Raglan Lite. And it is sitting at $8.50 USD or $13.66 AUD. And this one has 95 projects on Ravelry. This one stood out to me because I love the details. So apparently the shape is inspired by the classic baseball tee silhouette. So it has slightly different texture on the sleeves, and it also has a curved hemline, which I think would look really flattering and beautiful on a whole variety of different body shapes. It's also a unisex pattern, so I think it would look lovely on people who are dressing in more feminine styles, and particularly if you then knitted it in a particularly feminine colour. But it also, I think, would look wonderful on people who dress in a more masculine way. So if I were to knit a project for my partner, I think this one would be a pretty good contender, particularly if I made it in maybe a dark green. I think would look really nice on him. And if I did make this for him, I would probably omit the curved hemline and just go with a straight hemline. But in any event, I love the idea of a fingering weight pullover because if you've watched my knit flops video, you would know that I had said that a heavier pullover is just something that I can't get a lot of wear out of here. It needs to be either much lighter in terms of the fabric or a cardigan so that you can get some airflow in. But I've had people comment saying that a fingering weight pullover is perfect for people in similar climates here. So I think it's a really good option. And I'm also kind of craving the process of knitting a pullover as opposed to a cardigan. So yeah, this one is really standing out to me as a good option, particularly because I believe the pattern has options for both the short sleeve and the long sleeve. So you could even make one for the cooler months, or you could turn it into a bit of a tee in perhaps a different fiber for the warmer months. So a very versatile pattern. The other standout of the season, because of the changing weather, is of course a lot of people have hay fever, myself included. So you might notice there are more cuts than usual throughout this video because I'm cutting out my sneezes. So apologies for that, but it is just a sign of the season. So the next category is vests. And I tell you what, after just having finished my vest number 1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, I'm like this close to making vests my whole personality. Because I wore it into work the other day on a Friday, I think, casual Friday vibes, and it was the only piece of knitwear that I didn't have to take off the entire day. And I even went for a bit of a walk at lunchtime and came back and wasn't completely overheating and dying of like heat stroke. So I'm really into vests right now. And that shows in this next part of the roundup because I have 3 vest patterns that I'm loving the look of. So the first one is the Semper Slipover by the Knit Purl Girl. And this pattern is £4.50 or $9.13 AUD. And this one has 60 projects on Ravelry. This is one that I really like because it just looks to be a really well-fitted vest. So in my vest number 1, I had a slight issue in that the shoulders kind of slightly overhung. And I think on reflection, I would have liked it if they sat more directly on top of my shoulders. And I remember reading somewhere that Sophie from the Knit Purl Girl shares that view. And that really comes through in this pattern. And you could even jazz this pattern up a little bit by having twisted rib instead of the normal ribbing at the neckline and around the sleeves. Do you call it sleeves still? Around the arms? I think that would be really, really lovely. And when I think of Sophie from the Knit Purl Girl, she's one of the designers that I started following well back in my knitting journey. So I really feel like I've kind of gotten to know her over the years. And her patterns stand out to me because they are often very well thought through. She's a lady who really thinks of the details and makes sure that there's enough information in the pattern to take you through every step. So I would buy this pattern because of the fact that she is just known, I think, for really well fitted patterns. And actually, I think this one that I'm knitting is the first pattern that I bought from the Knit Purl Girl. I'll have to put the details up on screen because I really don't remember. I knitted this cardigan a very long time ago and it's knitted in a cotton. Anyway, I'll put the details on screen, but I do love Sophie's patterns. And this one is knitted in a fingering weight with a lace weight yarn held together for about a fingering weight overall. So again, a light layering piece, and I think it would look really nice in the exact outfit that she's wearing, possibly with a blazer over the top for work. That's probably how I would wear it. And yeah, I love it. I love the idea of this one. Okay, so on to the next vest pattern. And this is the Emery vest and pull, which is sitting at $8 USD or around $12.86 AUD. And this one has 58 projects on Ravelry, but I fully expect that number to blow up because A, this is a beautiful pattern, and B, I believe she's a pretty popular designer. And for good reason, her patterns look really, really lovely. And I've seen some of your comments suggesting different patterns by this designer. So I did have fun looking through her catalogue. But this one really stood out to me. And I know cables aren't everyone's thing, but personally I don't mind them. And I really like this particular cable pattern because it doesn't look exactly the same as every other cable pattern in my view. I really like that detailed cable right in the middle and the different texture inside those crisscrossing ones down the side. But of course, this pattern does come with the pullover pattern as well. And it isn't just kind of like tack on sleeves that is stockinette that you could have done yourself. She has done the cabling pattern down the sleeves as well. So if you're very into cabling, or you like using cables because they add warmth to your garment, you might really like this pattern. And I really love it when they have the options in the pattern for two different styles. So the fact that this one comes as a vest and a pullover is really, really an attribute in its favor, I think. I personally also really love the way that she's styled this in the photos. So just the vest with nothing underneath it. I think that's a really modern look that just looks really cool. And the weight of this one is a worsted weight yarn plus a lace weight yarn for an overall worsted or 10 ply yarn construction. So it's again probably bordering on too heavy for me, but I think you could get away with it, particularly for the vest. Okay, onwards and upwards to the last vest in this roundup, which is Vest Taipei. And this one is €9 or $15.50 AUD, and it has 33 projects on Ravelry. So this one stands out to me just because it is such a classic look. I really love the cable pattern that is used for this one. It reminds me of the August cardigan, which I'm sure you guys know I'm obsessed with if you watched my kind of favorite knits video. So I really love that pattern, and I like the additional detail of the twisted rib at the neckline and a different finishing technique it looks like for the armholes. So it doesn't look like it's just a rib. Perhaps it's a folded hemline? I'm not sure, but I really like how polished it looks. So this one is a DK weight yarn, so again, not too heavy, probably just the right weight for this season in my view. And I really like again how she's wearing it. So it's in this cream color. In her outfit, she's actually gone for that monochrome look with the same color on the top and the bottom, but different textures. And there have been comments throughout the pattern or on the pattern page saying that the pattern is very clear. So it has a 5-star clarity rating and an overall rating of 4.9 stars. So yeah, I think this is a pattern that would look really nice and a project that would become a staple in your wardrobe. And because it's a vest, you can wear it for a longer part of the year, or you can layer it to get some good or an extra layer of warmth through winter. Okay, so this next one might be a little controversial for an autumn and winter roundup, but stay with me, I think it makes sense. So this is what I'm calling a layering piece. It is the Queen's Cami, and it is $8.50 USD or $13.66 AUD. And this one has 90 projects on Ravelry. I include this here because I think this is something that you can wear year round. So this is a beautiful layering piece for underneath a cardigan or a thicker coat for autumn or winter on those particularly chilly days. But it's also something that could be worn by itself throughout the warmer months. So you could get a heap of wear out of this. And when I find myself putting together outfits for autumn and winter, they often do include a knitted underlayer because it gives you a little bit of warmth, and it's just the opportunity to wear another knitted garment without overheating or without the risk of overheating at all. I really like this pattern for a handful of reasons. So I personally don't love the summer garments or the summer camisoles that have negative ease over the whole body of the pattern. I just don't like wearing garments like that. So I love that this one has a tighter gauge at the top and then it actually moves to a different gauge towards the bottom of the garment, so it kind of flares out just the smallest bit, not a huge amount, but just enough that it's kind of fitted at the top and a little bit more flowy at the bottom. It has some beautiful details, so it's got that folded hem at the bottom, which looks very polished and is a little bit different to the usual ribbing. It has a v-neck, but it's not a very deep v-neck, so it's not overly revealing, which again is just personal preference for me. And it has, and this is essential, totally good bra strap coverage. So this is one that I think really should have more love than it has on Ravelry, because I think this is just such a staple garment to have in your wardrobe year round. Okay, so this is the last pattern and it is my favorite. I was really happy to find this particular pattern. So this is an accessory pattern and it is a hat and scarf called the Winding Road Hat and Scarf. And it is $5.99 USD or around $9.80 AUD, and it has 77 projects. So this is another unisex pattern, and I include it because I think it would look really nice on people who present masculine. So it has a very simple design, which is something that I know my partner always specifies in projects that I make for him. He really doesn't like anything that's too complicated or showy. I think this one really ticks the box of being simple but with a little bit of flair, because I love the way that it has kind of the knit columns being incorporated into this winding cable. I think that looks just so polished. It would add some interest as you're knitting it up, and I think it would still be acceptable to the people who like really simple patterns. So yeah, very much stoked with this pattern. And I could see myself making this for my partner or for my dad or uncles who are over in Canada. And the only thing I would say is if you wanted to have a folded brim, it seems like you could do that fairly easily just by adding a little bit more of that straight pattern before you start cabling. And then it would totally be able to work with the folded hem to add a little bit of warmth perhaps around the ears. So yeah, that is the last pattern that I have for you. Love it in that green color as well. Really, really beautiful. And the pattern is written and charted as well, which is fantastic. And the weight, I should say, is a DK weight overall. So it's a 32 stitch gauge to 30 rows. So yeah, that's it from me on the seasonal video for the Southern Hemisphere. I hope you found some patterns that you like the look of and that perhaps you hadn't heard of or hadn't considered. Yeah, I was really excited to do this video and I was so pleased to see all of your comments saying that you would like to watch one of these videos. And thank you as well so much for all of your comments congratulating Michael and I on our engagement. We had a really lovely time looking through your comments together, and it's just so nice to be able to share news like this with you and to know that it will be kind of well received and, you know, there won't be anything controversial. Because I have to admit, when I was thinking of starting this podcast, I'd kind of scroll through different posts on the internet, and often the comment sections were just kind of awful. And there was someone who objected to something no matter how straightforward or inoffensive the content was. But then, of course, here in the knitting community, when you look at the comments on different videos, they are overwhelmingly just supportive and lovely. And I think that's one of the best things about this part of the internet. So thank you so much for your comments and for watching my videos. I really appreciate your company and I appreciate, you just spending time with me. So again, if you liked the video and you liked this roundup, it would be wonderful if you would like the video. And if you haven't subscribed, it would be terrific if you would consider subscribing so that you can see future videos. So thanks again, guys. I hope you've got some good projects lined up for the coming seasons, and I look forward to talking to you in the next video.